So tonight we have Laurie. Thank you for coming to talking about painting iridescence. Thank you, Laurie.
Thanks. Hi, thanks for having me. Iridescence painting is hard enough as it is, and I'm sure all of you will agree with that. Some of us feel more comfortable painting, but most of us feel most comfortable carving. Get to the point of painting and you kind of freeze and you don't want to wreck all that good work you put into your carving. And so when I teach something about painting, I'm hoping to make it easier for you so it's more enjoyable for you to paint and less of a challenge. It should be fun when you get to the painting stage, and that's how I feel when I get there. So today we're going to talk about iridescence, and a lot of us don't understand even why iridescence happens. And in feathers, it goes down to the nanoparticle of the feather, and there's these melanin layers that are on every feather that has iridescence, and the more layers, the different colors are achieved. And this is why you can see a rainbow effect in a lot of the different iridescent scenarios you'll see in birds. There's all kinds of scenarios that you'll see in a rainbow, or you'll see in a bubble, or you'll see, but we're talking here about doing it on a feather. So with me, I like to use iridescence when I do a decorative bird that's finely wood burned. Say it's like this redhead here. When I use oils, the burning that I do is so refined that it gives an opportunity of depth in those feathers, and it also gives me the opportunity to put, because of that depth, different colors down into the depth of those wood burn lines. So if you come back at it from one direction with one color, you can come in from another direction with another color to create kind of that rainbow effect you're looking for. You have to make a decision whether you're going to actually use iridescent powders or paints that are actually iridescent themselves, or if you're going to try to achieve it in just painting the color as you see it. I'm going to use the example of a wood duck. On the scapular feathers, the back feathers, you're going to see that on the outside of the feathers, they're darker on the one side of the quill, and on the inside of those feathers, you'll find the iridescence, and it'll vary in different shades and colors throughout the bird. So when you're studying the bird that you're trying to replicate, you want to take a look at how does it look when there's no sunlight? How does it look when there's low light? How does it look when it's in bright sunlight? And a lot of these things make a big difference. Say in a loon, you don't always you see a black head, but if it's in the bright sunlight, you're going to see the purple on the crest and the green in the head and the blue that happens just before the white of the breast starts happening. And if you don't have the sun, you don't see that. And the other thing is, if you have that kind of bright sunlight, the pupil in the eyes of the bird that you're carving, and I'm using a loon as an example, would be a pinpoint because the light's so bright. So you have to choose how bright you want that light to be and how much of that iridescence you want to show. Are you going to replicate it in paint, or are you going to actually buy some iridescent tools, which would be, I use chroma airbrush paint. It's liquid, and it comes in 4 different colors that I'm aware of: green interference, yellow-green interference, violet interference, and then the blue interference. And I know this looks pink, but when you put it on a bird, it comes out purple once it dries. When I'm painting in oils, I use, you have to paint a supporting color. I paint in my base colors, and that would be these reds, the oranges, And then when it came back with the iridescence, it's very subtle on a redhead drake. I used a little bit of alizarin crimson, and then I used the purple iridescence, violet iridescence powder that's thinned down with water, and it's just a thin wash. And you need to do it and just let it dry, let it kind of soak in before it, because it won't reveal how much you've actually put on that bird until after it starts sitting for a little while. So one of the biggest problems people run into when they're, I'm going to turn this off, it's getting really hot, and we'll come back to that. One of the things that people do, carvers do, is they use way too much iridescence. It should be very subtle when you use it. You know, do your one pass, even if it's in acrylics, use really thin. And if it's not enough, then let it dry and come back and do it again until you achieve that nice soft look. When you're applying layers of paint, when you put on one thick one, it's thick. It covers everything all at once, and you achieve that thick house paint cover. But if you want to have a nice soft looking surface, a matte looking surface, you don't want to fill in your detail looking surface, then you need to do very thin and washes and achieve the colors that you're after in that manner. So I brought this, it was funny, I pulled out the redhead from the case today because I wanted to bring an example of how I painted in oils with highly detail, and how I painted in acrylics with a smooth bird, no iridescence, and then again a smooth bird with iridescence. But when I went to look for an example, I actually found the true palette that I used. I never cleaned it up from 2018. So it was kind of convenient to be able to bring this in and just show you how the small amount of paint and how thin it is when I'm using it. It's just a dab with the medium and some turpentine. Usually it's 50-50 by this time. And then just lightly cover it with soft passes. I'm going to show you on the video how that works. And then I want to show you a few examples. I guess I'm glad it didn't turn off. So this is an ACEO card, and they're like 3 by 5 inches, and it's only about this thick. So it's a good example of acrylic painting with the chroma airbrush paints. I don't use airbrush, I just use hand paint and squeeze it onto my palette as I need it. Here's the wood duck hen, the mate to that ACEO. And you can see the iridescence right in here, and then just subtly on above her brow, and then there's a little bit more on her crest there, but it doesn't really show in that picture. And that's just a matter of going down and painting these darker browns and then coming back with a little bit, well, this is acrylic, so I don't need a supporting color. If it were oil, I'd have to paint this color in oil and then come back and do a thin wash with that powder in that wash to achieve this. But this is the easiest way to do it, is with acrylics.
One question?
Sure.
Is there such a thing as clear iridescence, where you would put it over oil or acrylics?
To make everything look iridescent? I don't
do whatever you're doing.
No. Well, I shouldn't say that. Joe Sonia has some iridescent paints. Those are like the white ones you can look at after we're done.
Okay, but
hers,
those are acrylics, all right?
those are acrylics. I've never seen anything in oil that's like what you're asking about. Not an overall, kind of like a gas reflection when it's hitting on water, a gas slick. You see that kind of iridescence? Is that what you're talking about?
No, I don't know.
You don't know,
I've never
okay.
done it, but
That's all right. It would be sure fun to be able to paint with one stroke a nice little rainbow of stuff, especially for a wood duck, because it goes through so many different colors in its head, especially on the back of its head. I know Tom will attest to that. And it's always the same color on a wood duck, drake, and hen, the same colors in the same place on all of them. This is another miniature palm frond, and that's just got a little bit of iridescence, but you can see the little bit of blue I have here, and there's green here, and if this is on front, you'd see purple on the head. Well, a little bit of purple you can see there. This is a matching cocktail bird to a palm frond sculpture that I did, and it won Best in the World in the World Cocktail Championships in 2012. This was my very first wood duck drake smoothie, and I did paint it in oils. It was done in 1998, so I mean it's really old. I used a sponge for vermiculation, and I did not have any iridescent paint for this bird. This was all just kind of painted in without using iridescent paint. Again, that was just about as challenging as the one I used or brought to World as far as trying to achieve an iridescent color. Back then, I wasn't smart enough to really study the bird's feathers to see that colors halfway through the feather changes to another color, to the iridescence. So you can see that it's a little bit different than the one I did this year. Just another view of the same bird. Now here you can see I've got that dark outer edge on every one of those feathers on the scapulars. But no iridescent paint was used in that. I sprayed this bird and was kind of sorry I did. I'll admit that. Although, when these pictures were taken, it was a lot shinier. It's kind of dulled down. So I was a little concerned about being out on the brackish water on Assawoman Bay, and would my paint fail, and if it comes off, I'm screwed. So, you know, let's give it a little bit of protection. And it did make the colors pop, but it also added a shine I wasn't happy with. At World, I was going to come home and repaint it all over again. Ew, I hate that, but I decided I'd just leave it for posterity. It's not that bad. I didn't look at it until yesterday, since World. Put it away. It's like, didn't win anything. It's no good. Took it out, and it's not as bad as I thought. This is the, let's see if I can get my volume turned up. This is, has anyone started using Windows 11 yet?
I didn't even know how to do 10 in my...
It's like it's on, okay, here we go. Maybe it'll do it now. Subtle iridescence. All right, yay. The front and top of... Let's see if I can get this to turn up. Okay, I'm going to get started on the next step. It's long awaited. And that would be adding the very subtle iridescence. Can everyone hear that? To the front and top of the head, continuing down to the back of the head and on the backs of the cheeks. You can see that that's where I applied the red-orange, where on the cheeks I used the orange-red. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you would have missed an earlier video that explained when I call a color red-orange, that would mean red is the predominant shade or the predominant color, where if I call it orange red, then orange is going to be the predominant color, but it's still going to have some red in it. So I use the orange red on the cheek area, which will not have any iridescence, and then I added the red orange to the rest of the head and tinted that down after I had applied it to the head. So you can go back and review how I got to this point when it comes to the coloration if you weren't watching all the videos. And I want to make it really clear that it is important, if you're going to use iridescent powders, these powders are not bronzing powders. These powders actually are the color that you see, and this is lavender or purple. And you can't just brush this powder onto your duck's head or onto a carving and expect it's going to stay. It needs to have something that adheres it to the surface, the painted surface. So the paint that's on this head is already dry, and so to apply the iridescence, it's going to be important to add a supporting color, and it's not going to take much. Just a little bit of paint, and then that's what's going to allow the powder, which I get from Kurt's Waterfall Corner. It comes in about 15 different colors, I think, and my favorite is the purple and the blue and the green. It works really well on my loons. So the other thing is to be aware of is you don't want to use a lot. It's not necessary to use a lot of iridescence, and some people opt out. They don't want to use any. Some people would say, well, are you sure you want to use iridescence? Well, I do, and we're going to, and I'm going to show you how you can. So my supporting color in this is going to be my alizarin crimson, which is super strong pigment. You can see I'm not going to need but that much for the entire part of adding this onto my bird. Now, I'm using an Isabey Kolinsky sable. It's a filbert, and it's relatively new, so it still has its shape. The amount of paint and the way it comes off of the Kolinsky sable brushes is something that's not matched by any other fiber used for hand painting brushes. So some people would say, why are you using a Kolinsky sable just to do this step? Well, this is it reaches into the detail of my bird, and it will deliver that paint into the depths. So I just used it's thin, it's not a whole lot, and I'm going to just brush over the areas that I'm going to add the iridescent powder. And the thing that's nice about this powder is that it refracts the light so that you can see it is truly the color that you're adding. Just real thin. I'm going to pause here just to tell you that I'm using Grumbacher 50/50 Turpentine and matte medium number 1. It's a Grumbacher matte. It's called Grumbacher medium number 1. And when you start painting in oils, you have to start with straight matte or the straight medium. But as you apply your subsequent layers, you need to cut it back to the 50% because the medium will start cutting that paint, the paint layers below it, and it softens your paint. You don't want that to happen, so that's why I've gone from, well, you don't see that now, but that's what 50-50 means there. So this is a supporting color I'm adding. And it's much more purpley red than that orangey red that I put in those areas. But again, you want it to be quite subtle, and after this is over, if you come over and you look at that head under this light rather than how you saw it over there, you're going to see, and it's should be that way. I mean, you don't see that unless it's in the bright light, so that's why it's got to be, quite subtle.
Lit really well, but I tend to hit my long-handled brush right into the lamp.
I used to
That's
paint
what that
late
tinging
at
noise
night,
is that you hear.
when I'd hit my brush to the
familiar
lamp,
with it,
scare the
I'm
crap
pretty
out of
sure.
myself. It's so
It
quiet.
scares me in the middle of the night usually when that happens, but everything's quiet. Here's my palette knife.
So I've covered it all with that
Palette
alizarin
knife.
on the crest.
And I'm
then-
going to take out the smallest amount of this purple iridescence.
Got to be really careful. Don't sneeze.
Now, I'm going to pull the iridescence. Is it iridescent powder? Which doesn't look like there's anything in here. And there's a lot more than you think. I'm just going to deliver it. Sparingly
You should come at,
along the
all
back of
angles.
the head.
Don't, if you're righty and you only do it
Cheeks.
from the right, then there's not going to be anything on the left. So you got to be sure and come from all angles.
You can always come back and add more, but you really can't get rid of it once you get it in there. So you want to be sure you're not using way too much. And you want to make sure there's paint in the mixture you're using, because the paint is what's going to adhere this to the head. The other trick about this iridescence is that it doesn't show until it's dried a while. So you need to apply it and then just sit back for a little while and let it dry. Decide then if you think you need to add more. Use enough medium too so that it actually flows into the texture.
Painting with a Klinsky sable like this is wearing it down. Just because I'm using it on a decorative that's been burned so finely. It's kind of an expensive trade-off, but like I said, it gets into that detail, but it applies it nice and soft, so it doesn't rub the paint below it or soften the paint below.
And you said it dries pretty fast because it's did so much.
It does, it sucks in, and even sometimes you have to go back after a few weeks and touch it up because it, you know, looks really great, and then all of a sudden it's kind of sucked in, and that's just the nature of oils. And if it's still sucking in, then your bird's not really sealed all the way. Which with a decorative bird or just a head like this is not a big deal. But if you're going to be in competition and it's going to float in the water for any amount of time, decoratives don't generally have to self-right, so they don't get their heads wet, but there's always that judge who's got to put some water on it.
So what do you seal with, Lori?
I seal with TK's. TK's wood sealer is they call it rapid dry, and it's like water, and it sucks right in to the wood, and it still leaves it absorbent. So I've run out of just a little bit. I'm gonna add just a titch more, hardly as much as I added the first time, and I'll finish off the front of the crest. I had an opportunity to,
Quite as much
I painted that green-winged hen,
last year, so.
green-winged teal hen with a student in Wisconsin earlier this year before World, and he had some of the Joe Sonia iridescent powders, or paints, and they came out white from the tube, and they just did not have the same depth of color that the iridescent chroma paints do, or the oil with this powder. So maybe I was using them wrong.
I'll let that set up on that area. And then we've got a little bit more to do. This is a copper color that I'm going to apply on the cheeks. And it's not so much of an iridescence as it is a shimmer that I see on the entire head. And there's no shimmer at all in the cheek area. So I'm going to add
Right now there
a
isn't.
bit of that to the cheeks. And I'm going to use the orange of the cheek. Let's
I
pull
had
the
to
skin
peel off
aside.
the skin to get in.
Access it. Need a lot.
And you want it to distribute it evenly onto your brush. That can be an important thing to keep note of. So this is almost done, guys. It's hard to see the difference that it makes. Well, I can see a little bit of difference. It shows a lot more on my really great screen here, but it does add that shimmer that I was mentioning. I don't know if anyone's seen Dick LeMaster's gallery, great gallery of birds. It has a redhead that actually shows this iridescence on it. You don't usually see it, but it was one of those. It just grabbed me when I saw it the first time when I got that book.
When you're painting it, I see that you're going against.
You would think it would have been so much more.
Exactly, so it'll kind of catch it into the detail.
More
So does that pull it deeper then?
It
Isn't that
does.
better? In this case, less is more. Alrighty.
I'm not sure how far I go into
Brush
this.
out.
I think I'm just cleaning up, so we can stop this now. So that's how I apply the iridescence to the already painted head. And it becomes very subtle. And I'm hoping that some of you will come up here and take a look at the subtle iridescence that's achieved by what you just saw me do. These are the very first set of iridescent powders. There was maybe 3 more, but I had a teenage daughter who thought they were so cool she used them for makeup. So, what? You know, I go in to use it, it's all gone. Oh no. So I called Kurt and told him what happened, and he said, I've got bags of that stuff. Let me just send you some. This is what I believe is being used in the Joe Sonia. It says it's blue, but it looks white. We got silver, lilac, red, and green. I haven't played with them. I just didn't like the way that they worked with my paint. These are a couple of other iridescents. I don't know where I got them. I just picked them up along the way. I thought, well, okay, those are common colors up here. Bring them home. I probably got them at World or another show. But these are really bad. These are bronzing powders. These are what, especially this one from 1984, I bought it. And what happens with the bronzing powder is that it's metal. And it looks pretty good for a while, but what happens is that metal tarnishes and then it just turns into like nothing. I did it on my very first bucklehead drape, and I can see where there was maybe some color, but I didn't have a supporting color. I didn't paint any in it. I just relied on this bronzing powder because this stuff wasn't being made yet. It wasn't available on the market yet back then. Then Chroma came out with these beautiful acrylic paints that I really like by comparison. When I was in Wisconsin with my student, he had the Joe Sonia, and I brought this for the green wing teal speculum. And so I tried it on mine, his Joe Sonia, and I'm like, I don't like that at all. And I actually got it wet and kind of wiped it off and then put that on. He looked at it and says, that's what I want to use. So, you know, he went and I gave him some to use, and he went and bought that at World this year. So, again, here's really subtle iridescence going on. This is not the best paint job in the world, so don't look too close. But feel free to look at these in the light because it's going to look a lot different than when they were over there. Do we have any other questions? Let me see if there's any pictures that I missed. I think we're all done though. Oh, this is a different wood duck I did. I forgot about. I don't have the eye rings painted yet, but I'm starting to do the base colors. I'm going to quick flip through them. You can see the rainbow effect that goes down, and it's like this on all of them. They've got this yellow green at the end, and it just goes through the rainbow every time. So that'll be it. That's it. So, any questions?
So I think I've heard that the chroma paints are discontinued or they're no longer making them.
The chroma airbrush?
Yeah.
I haven't been able to find them anywhere, and I'm so glad that I have. You know, I have a few more bottles of this, 2 more of each color,
So
and they never dry out. It's like not like the Joe Sonias can get the air in the tube, and then you got the skim on the inside, and you know when you're using your Joe Sonia paints, if you're using or any tube paint, it's really important to squeeze that air out before you put the cap on, and then you won't have that issue.
there's no other alternative acrylic that you found?
Joe Sonia. And she's using this white based creamy color stuff, and when it dries, I suppose it looks okay, but it wasn't as deep in color. Didn't have the same pigment value that I find in the chromas or in just using the oil with the powder. Any other questions? How many of you painted with iridescence before? And what did you use? What were you using?
I like using golden.
Golden has some I've heard about. Do they?
All theirs is white when it comes out of the
It,
tube.
white. That's like the Jo Sonia's.
But it's, the chroma I found gets a lot of sparklies in it. And if you look at them closely, you can see, it looks
The
like little
difference.
pixels.
Mm-hmm.
And the golden I find is a much finer.
Finer pigment.
Kind of
Grumbacher's finest oil paints were a finer grind and a stronger pigment. You saw the tube that I had, the alizarin crimson. That was from 1985, and I just opened it up again today. So that's why it looks so crummy. It's because I don't know what happens to oil paint tubes, but they just seem to seep out linseed oil and some of their properties on the outside without even touching them. They sit in a box and do that. So they still work if you can get the cap on and squeeze them out. They're still really good paints. So I'm still using my Grumbacher Finest from 1985 when it comes to oils.
Are you just mixing the golden with acrylic?
Yeah. And the golden seems to keep forever too. I've had tubes for a long time.
It doesn't dry out.
It's just as creamy and nice as the day was new.
Well, they were selling, I really like Deco Art Traditions paint. They never had an iridescent paint. But it was very durable. However, those would also not have a very long shelf life depending upon the color. And they sold some of these little ceramic triangles you could put into those bottles to help get them shook up and all. But if you don't use them for 6 or 9 months and sometimes even a year, it's like time flies, and all of a sudden you want to paint and you got crap for paint anymore because you didn't shake it 6 months ago, and maybe it would have been a better thing if you had. So I try to go through and sometimes I'll even take what viable paint is in those tubes and put it into something, and then I'll take and get all that dried out other paint, get it out, start over, and then put the tube back, or the good stuff back into that bottle and start over, because paint's expensive and a lot of stuff you can't get anymore. I have a whole bunch of chroma that isn't the iridescence. I only brought these, but even though that's still viable, and again, I never used it in an airbrush. I have an airbrush, I just don't like using airbrush, so it works for great as hand painting because I always tend to thin mine down to at least this thin, and usually much more thin than that for thin layers. Like I said, 10 thin layers is better than 1 or 2 thick ones if you want it to look soft. And that's because you got the edges. Say you're painting a square and you paint the first coat. Well, you paint the second coat thin, and you're not going to be able to paint it exactly the way that you did the first time. Even it's going to be a square, yeah, but it's not going to be exactly, it's microscopically different. So you add a third and a fourth and a fifth, and all of a sudden those hard edges become a soft hard edge, if you can follow me on that. So that works really well on feathers. Really soft looking transition in your colors.
Thanks, Laurie.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for listening.